with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glasser. Come right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcast, but also as well, of course, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Magic Man Sean Grice and Joe Soro, they stopped by Inside Sports Fantasy Football as we cover week one of the NFL. So go ahead and check it out, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, wherever you get your podcast. But also, speaking of Joe Soro, he probably won't be here today because he's so busy with his company, Simblades. Simblades with a Y.com. And you know, when he gets a chance, he always checks out LakersBall.com as Ox1947. And speaking of Lakers websites, you know, Laker Tom, the number one Lakers blogger that's out there, is still doing backflips as we speak. He's been doing it for days. He's already eager to get on the weekend with us here at the Lakers Fast Break. He's already got the Lakerholic Spotlight set out for Saturday at 3 p.m. He's eager to talk Christian Wood, so we're going to make sure he gets plenty of time to talk Christian Wood on Saturday. So make sure you check that out. Plus also his thoughts. You know, he's got about a dozen articles on Christian Wood ready to go right there for you. And also Jamie Sweet, his good friend, probably telling him why you shouldn't be so glad you've got Christian Wood with another dozen articles of his own. And you can find that at Lakerholics.com. Our good friends, Empire Jeff TV, he was on for at least 2-3 hours last night. So go ahead and subscribe to his channel talking about, guess what? Christian Wood. Also, as well, our good friend John McKinley on his channel, some great conversations as well. And speaking of YouTube, please go ahead and click on the little Joe Soro on the right-hand corner of your screen if you haven't already, because you get the latest notifications on when we go live with the latest Lakers Fast Break podcast. Well, I'll tell you what, it's great to have you here as we continue our NBA observations. We're looking at each and every one of the individual teams out there. And on today's show, we have a team that I think it's easy to say that is going to be on the rise this season. They made some great offseason moves, very comparable to what the Lakers did in most people's eyes, and we're looking forward to hearing some great thoughts today. You got to go ahead and check out his work today. I'm going to put it in the actual chat for the Indianapolis Star. It is Dustin Dopirak. And Dustin, great to have you here. So thankful, so blessed that you were able to go ahead and stop by to talk the Indiana Pacers today.
No, thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Just, I'll tell you what, though, I think you and I can go ahead and just really agree on something right now for Team USA, as our good man right next to me, Magic Man. He's our World Cup reporter. He gives us the latest details as far as everything going on in the World Cup. And I can tell you right now, as both observers of the World Cup, Tyrese Haliburton and Austin Reeves have gelled together as players coming off the bench for Team USA like no other. I understand Tyrese Haliburton is a star, fast growing, got his huge extension. Probably Sacramento will be regretting that trade in the not too distant future. All that stuff aside, I have a feeling, I don't know, after their time is done with their current contracts, I still have a feeling that this experience may lead to Tyrese Haliburton and Austin Reeves playing somewhere together down the road.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them because you're right. The chemistry has been special. I mean, they have really played together well. They seem to be having a blast out there together. And they each seem to sort of accentuate each other's positives. And I think even when Tyrese is getting a little bit more defense or whatever, one of the other is being guarded more, with a higher level of difficulty, they seem to be able to figure out, how to play off of each other. They can both play make. And it's just been fun to watch. I mean, I think there's that iconic picture of Reeves dunking on the fast break and Tyrese right behind him, elevating at the exact same level. It's like just, sort of them both sort of in elevation. It's really cool. The one thing I'll say, Tyrese gets along with everybody. That's the one thing I would say. I could absolutely see them playing together. But the thing about Tyrese is, Tyrese is recruiting the whole NBA. Just anybody that he can get, he will take. And it's just, that's the biggest reason why he got the extension he got. As good of a player as he is, the gamble they're making by throwing all of the money at him, by saying, hey, we're making this a max contract that becomes a super max if you make an all NBA team, and they believe that at some point in these 5 years that he will. A big piece of it is they believe in the person as much as they believe in the player. And it's not just that he's a nice guy. It is that way of playing infuses with his style, like that he is all about being out there and spreading the ball around, getting as many people involved as possible in ways that make them look more successful, in ways that make them better. I mean, I think one thing that, they paid Miles Turner a lot more money, obviously, about a year ago at this time. I'm sure every Lakers podcast was talking about how soon they were getting Miles Turner. And a big reason why none of those trades happened is because when they really got Haliburton and Turner going together after Turner came back from an injury, Pacers brass was like, "Whoa, this works." You're seeing a better Miles Turner because he's playing with Tyrese Haliburton, because Haliburton's rewarding him for running the floor, setting him up in pick and roll well, putting him in good positions to be successful. And Miles had his best offensive season of his career. So as much as I would not rule that out at all, because I think they're getting along fantastically. Tyrese is everybody's best buddy, and I think that's true. I mean, I think you watch him with the rest of the Team USA guys as well. He's just good at getting along with people. That is his superpower, is his connectivity. He's a really, really good player, but he's better at connecting. And when he's the point guard and when he's the guy that's running the offense and pushing the tempo and everything, his desire to involve everybody is what makes that offense even more effective and even more appealing for other guys to play with. And he was immediately, he got on the phone with Bruce Brown as soon as, the clock struck 6 or whatever it had to be, for free agency. He was all about just getting as many people as he could. They got Obi Toppin. He had Obi Toppin out at a pro-am. Basically, he came back to Indy for a week just to work out with Obi. And then there was this pro-am that Kyle Guy was running up about in this, the county north of Indianapolis. And they asked Tyrese to play. And he was like, "Can I bring Obi too?" And so it was a big show in north of Indy of those two getting out together. And they had never played a game together, but they did a pretty good job of showing off. It looked like they were, acted like they were old friends. That's Tyrese. And that's what's, I think, made the second unit so effective. And I think that's what gives Team USA a real shot of winning this gold, is that their depth is better than everybody else. I mean, there are better players still involved. I think, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having a better tournament than anybody on Team USA. Even Anthony Edwards. I think, Luka was obviously terrific. Canada looks really good, but that second unit, I think, is what gives USA a chance to overwhelm people over time. And I think Tyrese pushing the envelope is really what makes them as effective as they are.
Also here today, good man indeed. He is the madman from Toronto. Got to go ahead and make sure he gets out of Toronto traffic to go ahead and talk to Dustin Dopirak today. It is the Magic Man, Sean Grice. Sean, great to have you here, my friend. As someone who has been eyeing the World Cup and seeing before your very eyes the brilliance of Tyrese Haliburton, as someone who could very well be within the next, by the time, let's say, his extension is over, could be well thought of in that conversation as one of the best players in the NBA. Already he's growing and getting to that point already. I think by the time he does finish it, he will be thought of in that measure.
Yeah, 100% drilled, and I have no doubt that Rick Carlisle has pretty much watched every minute of Hallie playing, especially with Austin Reeves. Dustin, the Pacers this year have probably the most exciting team in the league as far as league pass is concerned.
That's true.
They pretty much have a plethora of young talent. They have a plethora of versatile young talent. It seems like you need to put at least a blowtorch or two as a shooter on the floor with Hallie at all times, and you also need a Swiss Army knife or two. So I was wondering what your opinion is about their starting five, because as you know, with the Lakers now signing Christian Wood, it's been a debate about what our starting five will look like. What do you think the Pacers starting five looks like? Do you think they insert Bruce Brown into the starting lineup because of that big contract?
I do, and it's not just because of the big contract.
Right.
That's part of it. When you throw that much money at somebody, you feel the need to justify it. Certainly. I mean, part of the reason they threw that money at him is they had to hit the floor. They had to give that money to somebody, and that's part of the reason why they were able to make that signing, is they had to go out and get somebody. I think a lot of the other targets that made sense for them certainly seemed like they were going to go after a power forward, and all those guys re-signed for mega money. And obviously they were able to get the Obi Toppin in the trade. But, once all those guys are off the board, I mean, you don't know how soon they kind of came to that conclusion that that's how it was going to go. They had to go pay somebody. And so Bruce Brown wasn't going to get, Denver couldn't pay him nearly as much as they could, and nobody else was willing to go up, $22 million for Bruce Brown. But I don't think that's the only reason. I mean, I think the spot that they're in is interesting because I think, right, the only guy who is in their best defensive five and their best offensive five is Miles Turner. The other four, you're at every other position, your best defensive guy and your best offensive guy are different. So I think Brown ends up starting for this reason. I think they need to have at least one really good defensive player. And I think what they'll ultimately do is they'll have basically situations where they have, I think Mathurin and Hield are the best two offensive players. And I think they'll pair each of those guys with a better defensive wing, whether that's Aaron Nesmith or it's Andrew Nembhard or it's Bruce Brown. They have a bunch of guys that are really good defensive players, and that if you put Mathurin and Hield together, you have a chance to be really good offensively, but it really costs you a lot on defense. Mathurin, I think, can be a really good defensive player. I think he's physically built for it. But you see that he's not there yet. He has the physical capacity, doesn't always know where he's going, sometimes gets trapped up in screens, sometimes just gets shook up, just missing kind of a move someplace. And Hield just has never been a great defender. I mean, he's not terrible, and he'll step up and try, but he's not a really good defensive player. And Haliburton he's a really good off the ball player. He's very good as far as reading plays, getting in position to get steals. But when you're talking about just manning somebody up, that is not his forte. I think he's gotten better. I've seen some improvement just in the course of the World Cup. I mean, I think he was better in the last game than he was 3 games ago. I saw some improvement there, just his ability to kind of keep somebody in front of him, to navigate screens. I think that's an issue. He has a real trouble with navigating screens. But the point is, if you've got Haliburton, Hield, and Mathurin, those are your best guys 1 through 3 on offense. They are not at all your best guys 1 through 3 on defense. So I think Brown gives you a real lockdown defender that you can put at multiple spots, that can defend different types of guys. He can defend a 1, a 2, or a 3. And he is a good offensive player. I mean, he's a good enough shooter. I don't have his shooting numbers in front of me, but 3-point was adequate. It wasn't spectacular, but it was okay. Showed a different ways, ability to get to the mid-range, ability to get to the rim, finish through contact. Is just a strong guy, a powerful guy at 6'4". Is 6'4". He plays a little bit bigger than you realize. Has point guard, caliber handles. You could run him at the 1 if you had to. And so I think he'll ultimately play because they like a lot of what he does. The other thing Rick Carlisle kept pointing out over and over again about both of these guys, about Toppin and Brown, was that he saw a list, I guess, that when it came to points per possession in transition, Obi Toppin was number 1 in the league, Tyrese Haliburton was number 2, and Bruce Brown was number 3. And so I've never double checked that. For as many times as he told me this, I've just presumed Rick's right. And Rick's a really smart guy. He doesn't generally flat out lie to us. So I presume he believes in that because that's all he wants to tell anybody. That's what he's excited about. But I think even not having that number in front of me to verify it, Bruce is good in transition. I mean, I think you saw when they got running, when the Nuggets really got running, and when Joe was pushing the pace or whatever, Brown was really good at getting ahead and finishing transition. So that's what they're really, really building around. Obviously, if they're going to really win at a high level, they got to get a little bit better in the half court than they are. But running up and down and getting a lot of easy layups is going to put them in position to win more games than they did a year ago. So I think that's another piece to it. Is while Brown is a really good defensive player, I think out of all of the guys that I would say are on that defensive 5, he might be the best offensive player. He might be the guy who gives them the best, is the best sort of real two-way guy, better maybe than an Aaron Nesmith or an Andrew Nembhard. I think, Nembhard's good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like each of their games, and they can give you something offensively. But I think Brown might be the most effective offensive player of that group. So I think he's absolutely going to play and certainly make an impact.
Once again, it is Dustin Dopirak. Please go ahead and check him out today as far as his great work at the Indianapolis Star. I actually put it in the chat as far as the link right there. Go ahead and make sure you check out all of his great articles there at the Indianapolis Star. Dustin, again, when it comes to what you were saying earlier about this team and what it needs to do in order to win games, It is very similar to what the Lakers needed to do last season as far as keeping the pace up. In the case of Indianapolis, they need to be number 1 or number 2 in pace for the entire season. The Lakers were in the top 5 in pace. It was to their greatest advantage to go ahead and be out on the floor and run because they're not a great half-court team. They're certainly not anywhere near a decent three-point shooting team last year. I mean, obviously the statistics bore that out. But when you got LeBron taking the ball up 100 miles an hour, acting like he's 25 again, going up and down the floor, that's the kind of thing. That's going to the line, getting fouls, going to the line. That's what we needed to go ahead and do to win games. And then finally, we got that in the latter half of the season that led us through to the playoffs. When it comes to Indianapolis, I see a similar type of trend. Who would you have centered around Tyrese Haliburton? Because Tyrese is going to be the one that's driving this Ferrari to push that car. I should say they push the Indy car, pardon the pun,
there you go.
through this race. Yeah, absolutely. But who needs to go ahead and pair alongside him? Who would you have him start beside? Who would be the best fit for Tyrese on the Indianapolis as far as pairing him up as far as from the backcourt to keep that pace going?
I think the interesting question is for him, it might be Buddy Hield, but for the Pacers long-term, future, it might be Benedict Mathurin. Because Buddy is down to his last year on his contract. And I mean, he's making $20 million, and I don't know, or I think he's probably goes down to 19 this year. And I don't know that they're going to re-up him. And so the thing is, though, Buddy's underrated. I mean, really got to watch him this year, and I don't know that he's as appreciated as he ought to be. Now, part of that is because things ended poorly in Sacramento. But basically, Buddy and Tyrese became really close through the trade. I mean, they were already, decent friends as was, but as they kind of came together, they've really become super tight. Like they went on vacation, vacation together this year. Basically, Buddy's from the Bahamas, so Tyrese went down there with him. They're hilarious. I mean, seeing them together is hysterical. They crack on each other. They had a contest all year for who was going to get the most dunks. There's a picture of Buddy flipping Tyrese off because he got a dunk and Tyrese was, jawing back about him. I mean, they have a ball together, but their styles really play together well. I mean, Buddy attracts a lot of gravity. I mean, you have to cover him on the perimeter and like from a, when you look at high volume guys and percentage, I think he was second in the league in makes last year to Klay Thompson, set a franchise record, breaking Reggie Miller's franchise record. My apologies. My dog has thoughts on this also. He demands a lot of gravity. You have to go cover him. You have to make sure there's somebody out there, getting in his face. And so that opens the floor for Tyrese and for everybody else. I mean, it commands some gravity when you're running pick and roll with Turner. There's got to be a guy who does not cheat off of Buddy Hield or he's getting a 3-ball. And so, again, the numbers that he got at this age at 30, he was shot like 42.5%. My apologies. I'm going to try to move out of her way.
No worries.
But,
I don't know if your dog's agreeing or disagreeing with your assessment on that. I just wanted to let you know.
A little of both. But also she's policing the entire neighborhood as part of the deal. She has to make sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. Oh, now she's going to go outside. So now we're good. Anyway, apologies for that.
No worries, all good.
So for Tyrese, it's probably better to have Buddy Hield because of the gravity that he attracts. Mathurin, though, they obviously believe in him a lot. He's the first guy to make all-rookie since Rick Smits in, I think, 1989. First team all-rookie. They've had second team all-rookie guys. But they certainly view him as having the capacity to be just one of the best players in the league, to be an all NBA caliber guy, an all-star caliber guy. Because he's just a really great scorer. Had just a phenomenal year at Arizona before. His rookie season was third all time among Pacers rookies. Clark Kellogg and Chuck Person are the only guys who ever scored more points, for the Pacers as rookies. And again, his athleticism, his ability to finish through contact, his ability to find ways to get buckets is really impressive. He can become a better shooter. I think that's doable. He can become a better defender. I think that's doable. And I think they're ready to make him start. They started pushing him towards the end of the season into the starting rotation. Really, they basically kind of shut Haliburton and Turner down, more or less didn't shut Hield down. Hield had a couple games that he missed because he was sick, but they took Hield out of the starting lineup for a little bit just to force Mathurin in the position that he was starting. He got what Carlisle used the phrase the term responsibility, that he has to feel that responsibility, what it's like to start, because he got so many of his buckets coming off as the sixth man. And so I believe that's what they want to do with him next. I think they see that as the next stage in his development, and they still look at this as a long-term situation. I mean, I think if you ask what's a fair goal for these guys this year, it's playoffs, and certainly we can talk about that more. But I don't think they think at all that this is the year for their title shot. So it's about development for them still, even if they try to win more games. So Mathurin is the development option. I mean, again, if you just wanted to get the best possible team out there, Hield might be the guy. But I think that their belief is that Mathurin is going to be an all-star, is going to be, kind of one of those, I guess, aircraft carrier guys is the term we're using now. I think they believe Mathurin can be that kind of player, and to become that kind of player, he has to get the kind of responsibility of playing next to Haliburton and creating that chemistry. They had good chemistry. I would say Mathurin or Haliburton and Hield had better chemistry. But Haliburton also believes in Mathurin and believes he's going to be a superstar too. So Haliburton's on board with that. It's not like he's going to fight it if Hield's out of the starting lineup and Mathurin's in. So that would be my answer to that is that for any given day, Hield might be the guy that made sense, but for their long-term belief in what they can be down the road, Mathurin is probably going to be the guy that would start.
Magic Man, I know you put a great question in the chat. Did you want to go ahead and elaborate it and ask Dustin on that? I got you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gerald. Dustin, so obviously when the Pacers acquired Obi Toppin, there was some discussion there that Obi really wants to start. And unfortunately, Tom Thibodeau was very resistant to giving Obi starting minutes. But
can I just say something though, Magic Man? I have never heard of anyone during the course of the draft process when the Urius came out. I've never heard anyone talk more about someone's hips than Obi Toppin. I just never in my years of covering the NBA draft and the NBA, it's centered around his hips. It's hips. He can't play defense because it's hips. I'm not just like, okay. Yeah. Infatuation. We are just so infatuated, especially the draft experts are just so infatuated with these body parts, and it's just something like, okay. All right.
Yeah, especially Gerald's referring to Jay Billis, short arms.
Yeah, short arms. Great hands. Short arms. Yeah, Svi Mihajlovic. We talked to Boston Celtics, reporter yesterday, and it was just like, yes, we talked to about Svi Mihajlovic and just dwelling on these certain body parts these guys do, and it's just so funny. It had I remember even myself at that time. I started talking about Obi Toppin's hips, and I'm just like, what am I saying? My God. But go ahead, Sean. I didn't interrupt.
we digress. But getting back, Dustin, so the advanced analytics show that Obi's a double-double guy, more than 25 minutes a game. So, but the Pacers did have a really great draft. Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd. Like, I love Ben Shepherd. I was hoping the Lakers would have taken Ben Shepherd, but the Pacers took Ben Shepherd. So who do you think is the long-term starting power forward with keeping in mind, Dustin, right, with Hallie and you've got Benedict as well. So who do you think is a better long-term fit at the four for them? Is it Walker or is it Toppin?
My guess, that's a great question. I mean, I think Toppin's going to start right away. For this group. And I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to do a lot. And I think he's going to have a ball. I think he's going to have a blast this year just because, as you said, I mean, Thibodeau was not big on starting him. The stories we read, I obviously wasn't following it super closely until he got traded and then sort of looked back at the previous coverage. And it just seemed like the biggest thing was obviously Julius Randle was the guy, and right as they drafted him, Randle takes that leap to really being a superstar and, or wherever you want to put Randle where he is to be an all-star caliber player. And so that, Obi really got buried and Tom doesn't like the idea of playing two offensive minded fours together and throw one of them in at the five just to do it. He's like, I want to have rim protection with a guy like a Mitchell Robinson or somebody like that, even though that person might not score very much or do anything but dunk. He would, Thibodeau believes in defense and he believes he's got a better shot if he's got a real, shot blocking five in there, as opposed to having a couple guys that are scoring a bunch of points but are going to give up a lot on the other end. So Obi is going to he's going to start and he's going to score a lot because, I mean, he just loves getting out and running and dunking, and that's going to be perfect for them. Haliburton is going to love him. He's just going to throw lobs to him and all that. I mean, I'm presuming then what happens, I think they've got, I want to say he's got 2 more years. I want to say he's got 2 years in the deal. So what I presume then is going to happen is that he's going to put up big numbers, and he's going to be ready to walk in a couple of years. And if they see enough from Walker, they'll probably let him. But because, I mean, I think they believe in Walker. I was really impressed by some things that he did in Las Vegas. Certainly I think there's a lot of things that you like about what he's been able to do just in general, but seeing it up close, how he's able just, again, to truly defend inside and out. It's little things that you notice when you see him up close. I mean, like one of the first possessions in Summer League, he picked somebody's pocket. It was, all of a sudden the guy's name is escaping me. The other dude that played with Wembanyama that they picked, that the Wizards traded up to get.
Oh, Bilal?
Yeah, Bilal
Coulibaly of
apologies for that. Yeah, so Bilal had the ball in his hand, and Walker straight picked his pocket. Just kind of like tapped the ball around the other side and got going on the other end. Really quick hands, just real like true ability for a guy that size with width and muscle and arm and wingspan, the whole bit, to really defend on the perimeter and go eat you up out there. And obviously things change when you're talking about pros that have been there for 5, 10 years, that those are the guys you're defending on the perimeter versus another 19-year-old kid. I mean, it's a little different when you see guys that are more seasoned and used to the NBA and used to the caliber of defender. But that's still something real. There's some real capacity there that he can go out and take the ball away from someone in the perimeter. Rebounded it really well. And it was a phenomenal shot block. He just did a great job of, like, he was covering somebody on the perimeter, just sort of dove down into the paint and just swallowed a guy's attempt up. And so there's again, a lot of potential there. They got to get better defensively. So I think he's going to have real minutes as the second unit powered forward this year and have an opportunity to show things off. Offensively, I was also impressed. Just his ability to handle the basketball in the open floor. I mean, he ran the point sometimes, for Summer League. Again, it's Summer League, but still, you saw a big guy having the capacity to bring the ball down on the floor and really thread the needle on some passes, not just kind of interior moving it around, from 4 to 5 or kicking it back out, but having the ball on the perimeter, on the wing, and, or in transition and having a way to find guys. I mean, I think, he is going to have to get to be more consistent when it comes to shooting the ball, when it comes to finishing through contact. I mean, you saw him miss some either layups or on drives that you need to see better at from a guy that size. But I just thought the real skill set stood out to me. There's a lot of potential there for things to work on.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, a lot is writing as far as the growth and maturation of Haliburton and also several young players, very talented players. Before we ask you about the overall prospectus for the team, what is a good season for the team? What do you think will be a really good run for the season for this team? Who do you think is under the radar in your estimation? Some of the names, or a name in particular that you think can make a contribution that nobody is talking about when it comes to the Pacers?
I think it's weird because I think the Pacers are not a very talked about franchise in general, and so
Sure.
Who's talked about locally versus I feel like nobody gets talked about nationally. But I think even locally, I'm not sure, because I think everybody's talked a little bit about somebody. And I think there's a lot of interesting pieces. Obviously, I think Andrew Nembhard is a really nice player, and they really believe in him. And so I don't know. What's going to be an interesting situation is how they use him this year. Last year, they used him as a starting 2 guard, even though they didn't ask him to shoot very much at all.
We remember his shot, all right,
yes,
as far as the Lakers land. Yes, that we do.
I was going to say, he made an impression with the Lakers. Did a good job of defending LeBron that game. He defended LeBron, and that was not a guy I would have expected for them to put in that situation. But he did pretty good job doing that. And again, massive shot to knock out beat the Lakers at the Staples Center last year. But he was in a position. He played a lot of point guard when Haliburton was out. Got a lot of minutes at the end of the year when Haliburton was injured, and then when they were just sort of giving him some time to run the show. So I don't know what they're going to do with him and McConnell. I don't know if they play them together because I think TJ McConnell is still showed that he can be a very effective player. He had his best offensive season, and he's still a pest defensively, a guy that's going to attack you for 94 feet. And if you're lazy with the inbound pass, take it from you.
He's one of the leaders in steals on a 48-minute basis from what I've ever seen.
Yeah,
he's just
McConnell's up
great
there.
at that.
And yeah, he had 10 steals in a game once. He'll just go out. I mean, he gambles less than he used to, but he's still, I mean, he gets like at least a bucket per game. And that's probably pushing it. At least a bucket every other game, just because somebody throws a lazy inbound pass and he takes it, in the backcourt. Just the ability to just to rob somebody in the backcourt who's either not paying attention or not thinking enough about him and just misses him. But I mean, I was amazed really watching him up close. His ability just to get to his shot. I mean, like he does stuff that's very like YMCA, very like, like 12-year-old kid who's 5'2" and finds a way to get his shots. Like that's TJ McConnell. Like he'll like run a lap around the rim and then turn around and hit this little 5-footer. And it's just like, that doesn't seem like a thing that you should be able to get away with in the NBA, but he does and does it repeatedly. And I think he shot like 56% from 2 last year. And he finally, started knocking down some threes as well. I mean, I think he was over 40% from 3, and that's never been a strength of his. That's one place where he's had a problem, and he's really worked on his shot. Just really worked on his form and gotten a lot better. With Jenny Busick, the assistant coach, she's done a lot of work with him. And so he was really effective. But Nembhard, I thought, did a really good job of defending, multiple positions, guys up to, 1, 2, 3. He doesn't look as big as he is. He's 6'4", 6'5", and you don't realize that looking at him because he's like a little bit skinny, but he's powerful. So he doesn't get back down. And so he's a guy they really like. And, apparently, when there was some talk about Pascal Siakam and them having some interest there, the rumor said that it was Nembhard that the Pacers weren't willing to move. And that was somebody that the Raptors wanted. So, I mean, they really, really like him. They got him with the first pick in the second round last year. They really like him a lot. But it's just going to be interesting to see exactly what it is they do with him this year. Because I think it'd be hard to start him when you add Bruce Brown. You probably want to start Mathurin. But if you make him the second unit point guard, it's hard to get minutes for TJ McConnell. And I don't know if you can play those two guys together or how much you can when you've also got Hield that you've got to get minutes, Aaron Nesmith that you got to get minutes, Walker that you want to get minutes. You just sort of go down the line at those positions. There's a lot of guys that want to play, and they certainly don't want to completely bury Ben Shepherd, though I think Ben is going to have a hard time getting on the floor this year. They love him. I mean, to Matchman's point, I mean, they absolutely were huge fans of his workout. Because Walker did an individual one. Shepherd was one of those group workouts where it's 6 guys and you sort of let somebody stand out. And they said Shepherd was just all over the floor chasing every possible loose ball, and they love his hustle. I think he's going to have a hard time getting minutes, but they like him. And so if they have an opportunity to play him, they will. So that Nembhard's an interesting one. I think Isaiah Jackson is one I'm going to throw out because I really liked what he did in Las Vegas. And he added some muscle. He looks more powerful, still has the same amount of athleticism. It's just going to be a rim runner guy, lob finisher, shot blocker, I think he's reached the point even early in his career that he's not trying to do anything that he's not, and he's going to be happy to get those backup minutes. It's still a fight between him and Jalen Smith, and they still have Daniel Tice on the roster, and they're having a hard time figuring out what to do at center. But I think Jackson did a lot of things in Vegas that I think put him a little bit ahead of the other two guys, and that make me think, he might have a chance of, putting them away or at least forcing them to make a decision. Smith did a lot of good things, rebounded a really high rate per 48 last year, and is a better shooter, is probably a better all-around finisher, maybe a better rebounder. But I think Jackson can step up in all those areas, and he's the better lob finisher and shot blocker, and I think he's got a chance to do something. But there's a bunch of guys that are a little under the radar that, Nesmith is another one that I should add if I haven't talked about him yet. A guy that they acquired sort of as a throw-in in the Malcolm Brogdon trade from Boston. Didn't play a lot because Brown and Tatum, there's just not going to be a lot of wing minutes there. But he played a lot of power forward last year because they didn't like really what they had at that position. He stepped up as even an underman guy and kept taking on huge assignments. Every night it was Nembhard and Nesmith getting the top 2 defensive assignments, and he did really well on a lot of guys. Really good athlete, a little bit of a streaky shooter, but he can hit it. And I think he's done a lot of work this year. I imagine he'll get to play some more 3. It might be, there's not an area where he's going to be able to walk into a starting job like he did last year. But I think he's still a guy that they're going to want to keep around because they really like a lot of the little things he does. Loose balls, rebounding, box outs, just really being physical as a defender. They like a lot of things he does. So I think he's a guy that's going to matter for them also.
Awesome indeed. Once again, you got to go ahead and check out what Dustin Dopirak's doing at the Indianapolis Star. Please go ahead. I'm going to post the actual link for all of his great work. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and do so. And also, if you get a chance, make sure you check out his social media as well. But Sean, I know you have some more questions for him. You've had some great points so far earlier in the conversation. What's going on, my friend? What kind of questions did you have for Dustin?
Yeah, Dustin. So, although Rick has decades of experience, now he's got a fairly green behind the gills front office. Chad Buchanan's only, I think, 3 months into the job, but I had a chance over the summer to read what he was trying to envision that a team that him and Rick are constructing looks like, and he talked a lot about defense. He emphasized that. So this year, do you think that the Pacers can be maybe a middle of the pack to maybe a top third defensive team, even given the youth?
No, because they don't think that either. I think Kevin Pritchard's the other key piece of the front office. He's got a little bit more experience than Chad does. They're kind of like 1-2 together, basically. Buchanan is doing more, kind of media, and they're sort of pushing him more in that GM role. But they're really 1-2 together, and they've talked a lot about. They don't necessarily. They like to get to be top half, and you've got to remember that. They were very close to the bottom in points allowed. Now, part of that is their own pace because they're pushing it and whatnot. But, I think they were like 26 in efficiency, and I think they were 29th in points per game allowed. And obviously, everybody's playing pretty fast in the NBA these days. They're playing a little faster, so the efficiency is the more correct number. But still, they're giving up a lot of points. And so it's hard to go from the bottom to the top third. In this league where, you have teams that are so much more established. It's not, this was my first year covering the NBA. I'm used to cover college ball. You can flip it if you get the right kind of defenders in college ball and the other guys lose enough to the NBA or to graduation or the transfer portal or whatever. Obviously there's not going to be nearly that same level of turnover in the rest of the league. So them, climbing up that ladder and jumping all of those teams that are more established defenses and are used to where they want to play and who gets the top assignments and how everybody else fits in is going to be tough. But I do think, they obviously addressed defense. That was a thing they did on purpose. Certainly Brown being a really key piece there. Getting a guy that really believe in that can defend the other team's best player and have a guy that's a little bit more experienced in that and somebody that's done it all the way through a championship run makes you a lot better. Just getting a guy like that. They certainly think Walker can be an impactful defender, but as a rookie. Even when we were, after the lottery, I think Walker was a guy that you sort of circled as this is a guy that makes sense. Even before the lottery, even before you knew when they were picking, it was like, okay, well, if they don't get, if they don't get in the top three, who fits if they end up being 7 or 8, you would circle Walker. And I sort of asked, hey, how much of an importance is defense going to play in what you're saying? He says, well, you do got to remember that a rookie is going to be only going to be able to have so much impact. He's got to figure out how they call fouls in the league. He's going to have to understand what he can get away with and what he can't. What he can get away with against certain guys, what he can't get away with against other guys. There's a whole lot of just learning that comes. You can help. You can be a positive. But being able to really, just be the reason that a team makes a leap is difficult. And again, I don't think he's going to start. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to be an everyday second unit guy who gets 15 to 20 a game behind Obi. I think Obi gets the most, and maybe Walker checks in maybe a little bit before some of the other guys in the second unit. But it's going to be gradual. But the other issue is just it's a difficult, I think, scenario. The fact that they've got to figure out how to piece together a team that's got balance from offense and defense. Because again, I think if you said who's your best 5 defensively, to go back to that conversation, I'd say it's Nembhard at the 1, Brown at the 2, Neesmith at the 3, Walker at the 4, Turner at the 5. Best offensive though would be Haliburton at the 1. Hield at the 2, Mathurin at the 3, Toppin at the 4, and again Turner with the 5. The only guy that's in both of those 5s is Miles Turner, and he is again, has been a top of the league shot blocker, is up there as far as that's concerned, and is a solid defender otherwise. So it's key to have that guy as your cornerstone in the back there. But it's tough to decide, okay, well, when do you pull Haliburton? Because that's your best player. Again, and also Haliburton does really good things for you defensively. He's a really good sort of ball hawk center fielder. You put him on a shooter that you can let him cheat off a little bit, let him kind of pinch in on a drive or double down and try to take the ball off of somebody, or just read a passing lane and kind of blow up a play because he knows where to go, because he's got an absurd, basketball IQ. He's valuable defensively, but you're not putting him on LeBron James. You're not putting him on, Kevin Durant. You're not putting him on anybody like that. You're not putting him on even Jalen Brunson. Or somebody of his caliber as a player. Like if those two play each other for as much as, they're kind of at the same level right now, and who starts and who doesn't on that World Cup team, man, I wouldn't put Haliburton on Brunson. No way. I wouldn't trust him on that at that point to not get beat up or blown by. So you got to kind of figure out what to do with that. So there's a lot of decisions that they've got to make from a personnel standpoint to figure out, okay, how devoted are we to being a good defensive team? There's certainly scenarios where you're talking about, in game, all right, you're up 10 or you're up 12 or you're up 13 and you got to hold it for a while. Maybe you put in that best defensive five together. Maybe you shake up, you don't just do a first and second unit deal where you have that, that defensive lineup and make sure it gets minutes together while you also have the offensive lineup and play around with your rotations a little bit more, so you get a sense of what it looks like when they just put a lockdown lineup out there and just devote to having five guys out there that can defend. So there's a lot there in terms of figuring out how to get the most out of them defensively. They do want everybody to be better individually. That's one thing they talked about at the end of the year, is making everybody better at guarding their yard. And Haliburton talked about getting better, but physically, the same issues he's always had of just not being a big, powerful guy that's a big weight room dude is an issue that he still has. Again, his intellect is off the charts. His skill level is off the charts. He is not a massively muscular guy, and he is not. The weight room has never been his favorite place to be. And so, I think he's gotten better, but I don't know how much better. And so you're still making decisions with him in terms of how to place him somewhere where he can't get exposed, but he can be a positive. He's not your best defensive point guard. You have two better defensive point guards than he is.
Once again, it is Dustin Dopirak. Please go ahead and check out the great work that he's doing today at the Indianapolis Star. Also, go ahead and check out his social media. I'll put that also in the chat as well. We're following him. You should follow him too, right there for you on X, Twitter, or the Indianapolis Star. Go ahead and check out his great work there. So we ask you, with all this young talent mixed in with some veterans like Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, who our Laker Tom has been trying to trade to the Lakers and get on the Lakers for about a year now going on. Yeah, it's about a year this time it was during the summer last year. So I ask you, with all that talent you talked about earlier, you see them not progressing obviously into title contention, but you see steps in the right direction. How far do you think they'll go? Where do you think they'll end up in the Eastern Conference?
I think they'll be in the play-in round, somewhere between 7 and 10. I think they're good enough to have some kind of postseason. I think they want that. I think I think this group believes that it is time for them to go play some kind of postseason basketball. Again, even if it's just a play-in round, I think they can be on the higher half of that. I think they can be a 7 or an 8 seam somewhere in that range. I don't, other than Miami, who obviously took the leap, from the play-in round all the way to the finals this year. I don't think anybody that was in the play-in round was so strikingly better than what they were at their best. And I think they've gotten better. I mean, I think, obviously, they were right with Washington last year at 11th. Washington's obviously sort of fallen off, where I think the Pacers have gone up there. The Hawks have made at least some moves. I mean, I don't think they had as big of a fire sale as some might have expected. So I think they're still going to be competitive, but I think the Pacers can jump a team like that. I'm trying to think of, Chicago. I think they can be better than I've seen them beat Chicago. I'm trying to think who was the 9. Who was the 9 seed in the East?
I believe the 9 seed was Chicago.
Okay.
Yes. And they just, they were leading, and they actually ended up
they were up on
losing to Miami. Yeah.
Who did Atlanta beat that was the 10? Who did Atlanta beat?
You know what? If I'm not mistaken, I believe Atlanta beat Miami. I believe
Atlanta beat
became the
Miami in the
7th
7-8.
seed.
That's
Yeah.
not a 7-10. What am I thinking?
Mhm.
That's being a dummy right there.
No.
Toronto.
Yeah,
Toronto. That's the other
Toronto. It
team.
was the
Toronto
Raptors.
obviously took a step
It was
back as
Chicago.
well.
Yeah.
Let some of their guys. That's what I'm thinking. I was thinking of a 7-10, 8-9 split, and that's not how the play-in works. So that's my bad. My apologies. But yeah, no.
Oh, it happens to us all the time, Dustin. Don't worry about it.
I hear you. But no, Toronto, Chicago, Atlanta, I think those are all teams they can pass. I think that's certainly possible for them to pass each of those teams. Not that those teams won't be competitive. Brooklyn being another one, obviously, that was kind of the zombie Nets at the end of last season after they've gotten rid of Durant and Irving and all of those guys and sort of start over. They still have some players. I don't think they're going to be a joke, but I think they can jump the Nets as well. I mean, I think they can be up there, with that group. If they don't jump everybody, they can be close. I think Miami will probably have a better year. We'll have a little bit less just. That's a good team. I have no idea why they were 8th. They had no business being that bad. That's just still shocked at that. But, do I think they're up? They're certainly not ready to compete with the Bucks, the Celtics, the Sixers, or even the Cavs. Or, I don't think the Knicks. I just don't think they're quite there yet. They can compete with them on a given night, but I just don't think your ultimate wins and losses is going to be up there with the top 5. But 6, 7, 8, 9, I think any of that is possible. I mean, I think 6 is probably a ceiling as far as the seed is concerned. I mean, that would be a big deal for them to avoid the play-in. I think that would be huge. But it's, it's not out of the question, but I would think where the move they make is to be a play-in round team, and I think they can get out of it. I think they can get out of it and get to a series. Win enough games and play around, at least win once, and get to a series. And again, I think they'll probably have a hard time against whether it's a Milwaukee or a Boston or a Philly or whoever ends up being not 1 seed this year. However that all shakes out, I think they'll have a hard time there. But I think they can get to it, and I think that would be again an important step. Just getting to any kind of postseason basketball for this group. It's been a couple years. Most of these guys have not had a playoff series, and I think getting to just being able to play a playoff series would be a big deal for the Pacers this year.
I'll tell you what, you've been very insightful. We truly appreciate it. Also want to make sure we give a big shout out to everyone there in the chat. Kurt, Tears of Joy, Problem Child, all the great people out there. Blue Magic, of course, Through the Wire, Deep Purple, everybody that's been part of the best Lakers chat room that's out there at the Lakers Fast Break. But Sean, before we get into the honest opinion for Dustin on the Lakers, and I'm getting prepared. I'm ready. I'm ready. Your thoughts, though, Sean, on Indiana. Any last questions for Dustin before we head to the Lakers' thoughts?
Yeah, actually, Justin, before we let you go, I had one question for you. So, when the Atlanta Hawks decided to go through a coaching change a couple of years ago, Rick Carlisle was president of the Coaches Association, and he was very vocal about how he thought that Lloyd Pierce was mistreated during his time with the Hawks. Have you noticed that Lloyd has taken on a bigger role with the Pacers as far as being Rick's lead assistant? And how do you think that relationship has kind of welded into the team as well?
Yeah, no, I mean, he absolutely has a big role with this group, obviously just being associate head coach. But I mean, Rick really does view him as his right-hand man. Just really puts him in every situation he could put in. If Rick gets tossed out, and that happens, Lloyd takes over. So it's not, I think there was a time, and I don't know if it ended up being this way for the year, but I think Rick led the league in coaches technicals. So he's good for a couple of those, per game. Is just getting into it with the ref and getting a tech from time to time. So, someone's got to be able to take over the team, and Lloyd's been able to do that more than a few times. But you can just, there's also at least once he missed a game for, it was his daughter's senior night, I think I think she was a cheerleader, or whatever it was. She had a senior night, and, Rick put Lloyd in charge, left the team for a couple of days to go down there. And Rick has said, he's like, I'm going to delegate more. I'm older. I've been around this. I've coached enough games. There's going to be some life things that I'm going to go do, and I think, I think most of his family is, I think even his wife's still in Dallas. So, he's generally not around, his family for most of the year. And I think, I know his daughter, I think just graduated. I think I can't remember where she went. It might've been Virginia. It might be so, he frequently gave us updates as to where his daughter got accepted, which was great, and so I say that to say he's looking at life events. And so that means he's going to rely on his second in command in a way that he would not have done when he was younger and less established. He's saying, hey, I'm not going to skip these things. And I can, Lloyd can do it. Lloyd can handle a game. Yeah. He knows how to coach, not just, coach guys individually, but he can coach a game. I can put him in charge. I can walk away for a couple of days and everything will still be standing when I get back. And so that's kind of his level of belief in Lloyd, is that he can put him in charge at any given point in time and trust that Lloyd can not only coach the game, but win the game. And so everything, in every way that he can be put as a true second in command, that is as close to equal as you can be. He's put Lloyd Pierce in that situation. And, we've had, interviewed with Lloyd, basically any time that Rick goes through something. I think he went to someone's funeral, Paul Silas's funeral. And so he was gone for a couple of days for that, didn't miss any games, but was gone for a practice, so Lloyd took over media responsibilities that day. And it's stuff like that he, if there's some reason why he has to leave the team for a day or two, he puts Lloyd in charge and he's good with that. And I think that the team really trusts Lloyd. They believe in him at that level. When they were having end of season meetings, Lloyd was one of the guys that was there. I know Rick made a point of saying, they made a point of saying Tyrese Haliburton is a franchise partner now. And, he basically said, we had this conversation that it was me, Lloyd, Tyrese, Chad Buchanan, and Kevin Pritchard. And these are the guys that make the decisions. And Tyrese Haliburton is one of those guys, but so is Lloyd Pierce. So that's how much ownership he views Lloyd as having in the Pacers as is.
So we ask you, with this final part of the show, before you get a chance to go ahead and make sure that you tell everybody about all the great work that you're up to. All right, you can lay it on us. An honest opinion. We've had several already. In fact, you'll be the 14th team that we've already discussed as far as for that. We're actually finishing off our Eastern Conference tomorrow with the Miami Heat. So we've heard 14 pretty similar opinions on the Lakers, so for the most part, but we definitely want to hear what you think, because it means as just as much as theirs. What are your thoughts on the Los Angeles Lakers heading into the season?
I mean, they're certainly a contender. I mean, it's certainly getting all the way to the conference finals last year. They're right there as much as for everybody else. I mean, obviously the West is wide open, and it's going to be it was fun last year. It has a chance to be, I think, even more fun this year. Obviously, some of the other sort of powers in the league have re-upped, with Phoenix going out and getting Brad Beal, and the moves that bring Chris Paul to the Warriors. Memphis is still going to be there, especially once they get Morant back. If they keep all of that together, if that doesn't go off the rails, Sacramento is still going to be really good. And obviously Denver, I think we underrated Denver as just, as the basketball intelligentsia or whatever you want to say. I mean, that was a better team, I think, that it got credit for until the season was over. And then I think you look back and that was dominant. That was a special NBA season that the Nuggets had. And so, finishing, getting to the finals against those guys and getting beat, there was no shame in that whatsoever. But I think, I've just been really impressed with what they've done and how they have gotten it back together. I mean, I remember, seeing the Pacers beat them at the beginning of that West Coast road trip. And that was a long road trip for the Pacers. They had played the Clippers the night before and got beat up by Vika Zubac, and he just crushed him. And that was just, I think he had 30 and 20.
That's still a sore spot for us here as far as Laker fans and how we got Magic and Rob got rid of him. So yes, that's a very sore spot for us.
I see. Understandable. He's not that good all the time. He was just that good that day.
But he's pretty solid. Yes.
We've
had actually some issues at the 5 spot. If with Anthony Davis, I understand that he doesn't like playing the 5 spot as much as he likes playing the 4, even though he's more effective at the 5 spot than he playing the 4. But I digress. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah. But no, I think I remember coming back from that trip and thinking, man, the Lakers were the worst team they played on that trip. And that they had played, I think they had the Clippers, the Jazz, the Blazers, the Warriors, and it was like, man, like the Lakers are the worst team they played on that trip, and they ended up being the best team they played on that trip, or at least getting the furthest out of all of them because, they just made hung in there, that entire time to just keep contact with being a playoff level team, even though they were on the other side of it, and then go out and get all those guys and make a charge. I mean, they made a lot of smart decisions and had a sense of what they had to be, added a little bit of shooting, added a lot of defense. And I thought kept going in that direction, in the offseason, picking up a Gabe Vincent, stands out, picking up a Cam Reddish. And that's not a huge deal, but it's something. Obviously I don't think Christian Wood is a massive deal, but I think he's helpful. It feels like it's being made of a bigger deal than it is, but it's a deal. It is a useful other player that you could use as a big, that can score for you, can rebound and whatnot. But I think, I am really impressed by the way that they, just shuffled the deck, and said, okay, a lot of things have to change, but they made a lot of smart moves that weren't blow your mind moves. And I think that's, it was almost like they showed some maturity, I guess. That's a weird thing to say, obviously, for that, front office, but to not think we need to get the biggest splash or names because we're the Lakers. Everybody, thinks of us as having to get this big time addition. It's just smaller ones. Again, Jared Vanderbilt, I think, made a big difference for that team. D'Angelo Russell, I think, was really helpful. I mean, just a lot of small pieces made them a lot better. And I think you look at that roster now, and it's got a shot. It's got as good a shot as anybody at being a contender in the West. Again, I think you got to prove that you can beat Denver now. You got to put them as the definitive favorite. But after that, and probably Phoenix, if you're asking me to guess right now where they finish or who's where, I think you'd have to put Denver 1 and Phoenix 2. But the Lakers are right in that group that can be 3. Golden State can be right there too. Sacramento can be right there too. Memphis can be right there. I think just the West is becoming a lot more fun and a lot more entertaining. It's always has been, but you just go down the line. Obviously, I think Oklahoma City is ready to make a leap. Minnesota, I think, is ready to make a leap. I think Anthony Edwards is another guy who's having a fantastic World Cup. You're really seeing, I think, him make the leap into being an all-NBA caliber player. So there's not going to be a lot of easy nights in the West. But, really, I mean, parity across both leagues, both conferences is terrific right now. There's not a lot of, maybe 5 or 6 teams that you can look at and say, okay, you're probably getting them. But the other 24 or so, it's a rough night. It is not going to be easy for you. And so I have every reason to believe that they can be right there. And, they can certainly be a conference semifinals team at least. They could be a conference finals team again if they catch the right breaks. They got a shot again to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I mean, Austin Reeves playing in this event is a big deal, and having the kind of contributions he's had is a big deal. I mean, he's going to go in with the real confidence of believing he's one of the best shooters in the league and one of the best wings in the league. He's a legit all-star. He's an all-star caliber player. He's going to be in that conversation. So that it takes you, I think, to a different level, and they're going to be right. They're going to be right there when it comes down to it in the West.
Magic Man, any last thoughts for Dustin? Any last questions? Don't hold back, my friend.
No, I think that's good. I think we covered just pretty much the basics that we want to get through, Dustin. We'll find out more as we get into the season, right? But their depth is really strong. So I imagine a big part of this year is also seeing who do you surround Hallie and Benedict and Miles around that you build with your core going forward. Because once you have your core in place, then you can kind of make decisions about where you want to go, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're going to get a sense this year, of who's going to be there. And obviously, you look at one guy that I think a year ago they thought Chris Duarte was going to be a big piece of this, and they moved him to open up roster space and get a couple picks. So if things go poorly, you can, somebody that we think of right now as being a really key piece to this can go in another direction. Or there might be some guys that have their minutes cut this year and, that are coming up, that are going to be free agents next year that all of a sudden decide to go in another direction. I think O'Shea Brissett was another guy that they really liked that I think was pretty useful for them. Didn't have any room. They had a couple of veterans, James Johnson and George Hill, that they just kind of let walk. And I think they liked the idea of having somebody like that and just weren't able to bring him back because they had, made some additions that they liked. I mean, things can certainly shift around. I mean, I think you can pencil in and say, obviously, Haliburton is going to be the core piece of this. They're going to have Turner at least for this year and another year with his 2-year deal. And you got Mathurin there. Other than that, it's kind of up in the air. There's a good chance they let Hield walk in a year unless he decides he's willing to come back for less. And you're just shaking out to see, okay, is Neesmith going to be a guy that's got to be a part of that core? Is Nembhard going to be a guy that's going to be part of that core? Is Toppin going to be a guy that's going to be a part of that core? Who are going to be these guys that they believe in, long term, and say, okay, these are the guys that cannot possibly move. That I think is some of the questions they're trying to come up with, the answers they're looking to come up with this year and next year going forward.
So funny because you mentioned James Johnson. James Johnson, when it comes to James Johnson, the end of his career, the last 5, he may have not been actually able to play in the league for the last 5-6 years of his career. But my God, if there's anybody you want in a fight, an NBA fight, this is the man. That may be the reason why he lasted in the league so long.
It's part of it. No, it's a combination of that and personality. I didn't even realize how good he was. And then The Athletic did a poll and it said, who's the last guy you want to see in a fight? And it was James Johnson. And I was like, oh my God,
like
I did not realize this.
A 6th degree or black belt?
Yes.
The very top of
he's the real thing. You got to do a lot of kickboxing and a lot of fighting to get to be as good as Johnson.
He's a lot of people. Aside from being just intimidating on the just from the look, Dustin.
It's like, okay.
When you see him in the ring, this guy, like Bruce Lee once described fighting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as like an octopus. That's why it was such a challenge for him. And I remember when James Johnson was in Toronto and Dustin, nobody wanted to face this man. I mean, nobody. They basically had to corral even top flight fighters to try and fight James Johnson. Some of them were like, no thanks, I don't want a piece of James.
I believe it. That being said, for as much as intimidating as he is and the fight thing as he is, the reason he keeps getting jobs is everybody likes him.
Yeah.
Like so that's the other piece to it. And he was a fun guy to talk to just in the clubhouse. I mean, he'd be there every day, just chilling, having, different conversations. Tyrese Haliburton swears by him as far as just being a vet that he really got an appreciation for, that, Johnson really got, and Haliburton already knew this, but really enforced it for him. What it means to really invest in people and get to know people and try to create as many social situations as you can. Like, I mean, he was always bugging somebody to come over and drink wine with him some night, and like, it was just, he really, Haliburton, he'll tell you, he really appreciated that. Rick Carlisle was said, I went out and got him for a reason, that he really did a good job of being a big personality for a team. And he's, you really watch him in timeouts and huddles and he is in it, and he's coming out, at everybody, telling them what they need to do. Like, he's locked in too. Put him on the floor. I mean, there are some things he could do. He could still set screens, rebounds, handle the ball better than most players, his size. There's some things you don't want him doing at this age. You're not trying to play him a whole bunch of minutes, but he had real value for that locker room. And I would say, the one thing the Pacers probably had as much fun as any team that ever went 35-47 that I've ever seen. I mean, they had a ball last year, and James was a big part of that, of just having a really close. I believe Kurt Bear's comment here. If James Johnson was in Memphis, Ja wouldn't look at a gun again. That's true. James would know, keep him away from stuff like that. I mean, James has gotten his own trouble. Like, James has a history. So let's not act like he's never done something he was not supposed to do. He has, or at least he's been accused of it. So he doesn't have a flawless record if you look back on it. Yeah. But he was a big part of that locker room. And he is going to continue. Like, his effect is going to matter for. Do
you think they have enough adults in the room for such a young team?
I do. But partially because of that. Partially, I think they really learned a lot from James Johnson and George Hill. I think that really mattered to those guys. But I think a few of the young guys can really operate like older guys. Haliburton, while he's a guy that has a lot of fun, is a really good locker room presence. I think he has a sense of what he's going to be. Daniel Tice, as you mentioned in the chat here, is another one. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Because they have too many centers, and they had an issue last year when they brought him back from his surgery, where Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith, they were having a hard time getting him minutes because they wanted to make sure they got Tice out on the floor. But those guys were going 3-4 games without playing because Turner is the center, Turner is the starter, and it was just basically like, and he's playing 30 minutes a game, so you're really parceling out the other 18. And they were really doing it by rotation, where they would play, one guy 2 games in a row, and then the next guy and the next guy. But you go 4 games without playing. And so after a while, they decided to really take Tice out of that rotation. And, I don't know how upset he was about it. But, he just sort of, peaced. But he's having a great World Cup. He's having a really, really good World Cup. And you could see he could still play, and you could see that even in the Pacers games, he could still play. So, there's obviously the question of, is he going to stick around? What's his role going to be? How's he going to be? But Miles Turner acts like he's 10 years older than he is, or he can't. Miles is a fascinating guy. I mean, like, he really super intelligent, into so many things that are not sports, like spent time at Fashion Week this year, has big into music. He's also a geek, and it's funny because he's huge. He's a huge geek that loves Legos and Star Wars. Swear to God, he had.
Oh, I've heard.
He had the Mandalorian. So like every year they do a Star Wars night, and I think they do it just for Miles. And he shows up decked out. Like they do like a, walk up thing where they walk from the practice facility to the through the tunnel, I guess, to Gamebridge. And he showed up this year dressed as a Mandalorian, as the Mandalorian with the baby Yoda, and the Mandalorian helmet and the Yoda stayed in his locker the rest of the year. This was in like January. So like the last 3-4 months of the season, he's got the helmet. He was at Comic-Con in San Diego and put up a video on his Instagram and on his Twitter of him. He was dressed as, I think it was like the Invisible Man. I don't know, but like he had a hood over his face and whatever, and like all decked out. And he did a Rubik's Cube while doing that, just sitting outside dressed up with Comic-Con gear and everything.
Too funny.
And he finished a Rubik's Cube, and like that's Miles Turner. But it was funny. Like we saw him at camp. He did his camp for the first time because the last couple of years he wasn't sure if he was going to get traded or not. This year he finally did a kids camp, in Indy. And like, so we saw Tyrese Haliburton do a camp, Obi Toppin do a camp, and they're around and they're involved, but they're like, it's like they're treating the little kids like they can't, like they're, porcelain dolls. They don't want to mess with them. Like they're playing around with them and smiling, but they don't want to be too harsh, and they certainly don't want to be critical. Like Miles treats it like he's coaching the kids. Like he's going to like one station. It's like, we're running this and I'm going to get on you at every single thing. So there's these 10-year-olds and Miles is like, no, man, you got to do this now. And he's serious. He's a serious guy, intense guy, fascinating personality. So he's going to be an adult. He's 27, but he's going to act like he's 33. So that's another one. Buddy Hield's buddy. He's all over the place, but he's been around. He's a vet. He's not necessarily got a captain's presence, but Buddy don't miss anything. Buddy damn near got in a fight with Carlisle because they made him stay home because he had the flu. Like he went and got hospitalized, got fluids, came back, wanted to play. And they were like, you just had the flu. You're going to get everybody sick. You cannot play. And like Buddy got into it with him. And I don't know how bad it got, but Buddy was like, just ask Rick. It was bad. Like I didn't want to sit out, and this was this is toward the end of the year. Everybody else was sitting out. Like they were giving a bunch of other veterans time off, and Buddy did not want any time off. Buddy wanted to play 82. He's still mad that he didn't. And that's, that's a standard that's been set. Tyrese didn't play 82 last year, wanted to, didn't miss a game until he got hurt. So there is that standard some of it came from the older guys, but some of these other guys, even, again, Buddy's not a guy that you would look to and say that's a captain or that's somebody that commands the locker room. But like, when he shoots at practice, he's shooting by himself. Like he doesn't make anybody rebound. Like he doesn't demand the manager or, assistant or whatever rebound. Like he goes and chases his own rebounds, like that's Buddy. And so like that has an impact. And so like that's the sort of standard. TJ is another guy that has some captain, some veteran qualities. Again, Tyrese's personality is a big part of it. There will be some of that. Whereas if they didn't have James, they didn't have George this past year, there might have been a little bit too much youth, and that some of those lessons might not have got across, but they really did. And I think some of those important players became, key. Again, Bruce Brown's a guy now that's won a title. You add that, add somebody that's won a championship. So I think there's going to be more maturity than you would expect if you just look down the list, on the NBA roster site that just says the ages. I think there will be more maturity than you would expect if you just look at those numbers.
I'll tell you what, it's been awesome to have you here, Dustin, and I definitely want to check in with you during the course of the season if that's possible, especially leading into we're going to be doing team previews, game previews before the games. We always do post games. We're going to try and do more pre games as well. We'd love to have you on for the Indiana matchups if that's the case, if you have time. I know you'll be covering it, so maybe we'll have to tape it about something to go ahead and make sure your schedule's accommodated. But before we head it out, please, the floor is now yours. Once again, let us know exactly where we can find you, what you're working on, anything you want to go ahead. It's cheap plug time. We love cheap plugs right here at the Lakers Fast Break.
Much appreciated. Yeah, no, obviously everything. You can find all my stuff at indystar.com. Check out there. We have a Pacers heading. You can go on there. Obviously, we've been a little bit quiet lately. It's not a whole lot goes on, and we've got this kind of quiet period before camp starts in October. But starting to lead into a lot of that stuff. Hoping to do a lot of good player profiles and that sort of thing when they get into camp. Imagine the last week of September, you'll start to see us fill that up with a lot of Pacers content. And you can always follow me at Dustin Dopirak on Twitter. And I'm certainly not writing about it as much, but certainly will be following this World Cup stuff and checking out what Tyrese does. So check me out there, and you'll see some analysis and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, look forward to it. Absolutely, anytime. When they play the Lakers, looking forward to talking to you guys.
Absolutely. It's been incredible to have you here, Dustin. Please, again, everybody out there, please support what he's doing at Dustin Dopirak on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it today. Plus, also, make sure you go ahead and check out his work at the Indianapolis Star today just by typing in indystar.com. That'll get you on the road to go ahead and checking out all of his great work there indeed. But Dustin, great to have you here. We're going to close that because I know sounds like you got the dog still going on, still moving around. So make sure that you're taken care of on that. But we truly appreciate the time. Everybody in the chat room, you've been sensational. Magic Man, you're great as always. I know you're planning behind the scenes more team previews. Tomorrow from the UK, we are going to have an awesome Miami preview right there for us with John Jablanca. Please join us for that. That's at 11 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. So please, special time on that. But once again, great to have you here, Dustin, and looking forward to having you back on with us right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.